Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our weekly 30 minutes of Torah study for the Torah portion of Toldos. So first, we'll begin with a review of the Parsha. Yitzchak and Rivka are married for 20 years without having any children. Finally, their prayers are answered. Rivka becomes pregnant, but the pregnancy is very difficult. She's in a lot of pain. There's kicking going on in her stomach and she cannot understand it. She gets a communication from God that she should recognize that she's not just pregnant with one baby, but she's going to have twins. And they're not just going to be two individual children, but these twins that she's pregnant with are going to be the fathers of great nations that are going to be battling each other for generation after generation. The babies are born. The oldest one is Esav, right? He emerges very hairy, kind of like a beast, red. And Yaakov emerges sweet, gentle, very cute baby. The Torah tells us that these boys grow up, and Yaakov is Esav is a hunter. Right? He's a man of the field, right? He's a woodsman. Yaakov, on the other hand, is a Torah scholar, right? Studious. The Torah then tells us that one day, after committing an act of murder, Esav returns home, tired, exhausted, and starving. Yaakov is in the kitchen, and he's cooking some lentils. And Esav says, Yaakov, I'm starving. Please give me some of those lentils. And Yaakov says, how about we make a deal? I will give you the lentils, and you will trade all of your birthright. Your birthright and everything that goes along with it will be mine. Esav agrees. You can see how little he valued the birthright, and the trade is made. Then the Torah tells us that Yitzchak wants to give a blessing to his son Esav. He says, Esav, go to the field, bring me back some food, and I'm going to bless you. Rivka sees what's taking place, and she knows that if Esav gets the blessings, he will squander it, he will waste it, it's going to be a disaster. Esav is not a good guy. She says, Yaakov has to get these blessings. So what does she do? She dresses Yaakov up in the clothing of Esav. Yaakov presents himself before his father Yitzchak wearing the clothes of Esav, convinces his father that he is in fact Esav, and receives the blessings that were meant for Esav. Esav returns. He sees what happened, that Yaakov had deceived him, Yaakov had deceived his father, Yaakov put on the clothes of Esav, Yaakov stole the brachas. He's furious, right? He's so mad, he wants to kill him. And Yaakov has to run for his life. Being that Yaakov is running for his life, right? His parents say to him, you know where you should go, right? It's time to get married, right? Go to my relatives, go to my family. There you'll be safe and secure, and there you can get married. And this is how the Torah describes this text. And Esav saw that Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov and sent him away to Padan Aram, to take himself a wife from there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, saying, you shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And Yaakov listened to his father and his mother, and he went to Padan Aram. And Esav saw that the daughters of Canaan were displeasing to his father Yitzchak. So Esav went to Yishmael, and he took Machlas, the daughter of Yishmael, the son of Abraham, the sister of Nebayos, in addition to his other wives, as a wife. Now, I just want to fix something here on my computer, so hold on just 1 second. We'll make the recording a little bit easier. All right, there we go. All right. So the Torah tells us that after Yaakov runs away to get married, Esav himself decides he needs to get married again, and he marries wives that are descendants of Yishmael. So there's a bunch of questions here. Number one, right, why did Esav marry a new wife? The Torah says that Esav saw how upset his parents were at the idea of marrying a woman from Canaan. Esau's current wives were from Canaan, so therefore he wanted to marry a woman that was from a more appropriate background. Now, what did Esau do with the women that he was married to at the time? Did Esau send them away? Did Esau divorce them? Did Esau say, my parents are not happy with it? No. He remained married to them. All he did was he added another wife. So the question is, why didn't he divorce his Canaanite wives? If his parents weren't happy, he knew it wasn't a good idea. Why did he maintain his marriage to the Canaanite wives? Now, Rashi, all right, here we have a comment here from the Rashbam. The Rashbam says, and Esau saw that Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov. Esau saw that Yitzchak blessed Yaakov and gave him the land of Canaan that was given to Avram, instructed him to marry a woman from his own family, and instructed him further not to marry a woman from the daughters of Canaan. Esau thought to himself, the fact that I have married daughters of Canaan deprived me of the blessing of Abraham. So he married the daughter of Yishmael, who was of Avram's family, thinking to himself, perhaps I will now merit the inheritance of Abraham. So Esau makes a calculation. He says, why did it happen that Yaakov was able to get the blessings that are meant for me? How come the blessings that ultimately come from Abraham went to Yaakov? Perhaps it's because of my wives. They're from Canaan. So therefore, I need to now marry a woman from Yishmael. The problem is, did he help himself at all? He did not. Rashi comments, he added wickedness upon his wickedness. Not only, right, did he maintain his original wives who were wicked, but he only added and he increased into his wickedness. So we need to understand the logic. We need to understand the perspective. Why did Esau marry a new wife? And we also need to appreciate what is it that Esau saw. The Torah tells us that Esau saw, and therefore he added another wife. What exactly did Esau see that caused him, number one, to marry a new wife, and number two, made him not divorce the wives that he currently had? To really appreciate the story, we need to understand, who is Esau? What kind of person is Esau? What kind of character trait does Esau possess? And we can best understand it by contrasting the personality of Yaakov with the personality of Esau. So we're going to start with a story that takes place in the life of Yaakov in a few Parshas. It's not a story from this week's Parsha. Yaakov is leaving the land of his father-in-law. He's leaving Lavan. He's married. He has children. He's wealthy. He wants to go back to the land of Israel. The Torah tells us that he is crossing the river in the middle of the night, and there he is attacked violently by an angel. Yaakov fights this angel all night, and he's victorious. At the end of the battle, the angel wants to leave. Yaakov says, bless me. And the angel gives Yaakov a name. He gives Yaakov the name Yisro. The Talmud has this to say. The Talmud says, Bar Kapara taught, whoever calls Avraham, Avram transgresses a positive precept, being that it is stated, your name shall be Abraham. Rabbi Eliezer says, he transgresses a negative precept, being that it's stated, neither shall your name anymore be called Avram. But if that is so, then the same should apply to one who calls Sarah, Sarai. In her case, the Holy One, blessed be he, specifically instructed Abraham, as opposed to anyone else. As for Sarah, your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. But if that is so, the same should apply to one who calls Yaakov, Yaakov. There is a difference. In his case, because Scripture restored the name Yaakov to him, as it is written, and God spoke unto Israel in the visions of the night, and so Yaakov, Yaakov. So the Talmud is commenting on the name changes of Abraham of Sarah and of Yaakov. And we see something very, very different when it comes to the name change of Yaakov. Avraham's name becomes Avraham. You're not allowed to call him Avram again. It is completely prohibited. You're violating a mitzvah of the Torah to call Avraham Avram. His name was changed. When it comes to Sarah, right? Her name used to be Sarai, not anymore. It's changed. Her name is Sarah. You're not allowed to call Sarah Sarai anymore. However, now Yaakov, right? His name became Yisrael. Nevertheless, it's interchangeable. In the Torah, even though his name was changed to Yisrael, many, many, many more times, Yaakov is referred to as Yaakov. Why? Why was Yaakov's name change different? How come Avraham can be Avram? How come you're no longer allowed to call Avraham Avram? You can't call Sarah Sarai, yet Yaakov's name is changed and it's not a problem. So we have a few interesting answers. We begin with the Abarbanel. The Abarbanel says something very simple. The name Avram was not a Jewish name. So once God changed the name Avram to Avraham, now he has a Jewish name. He's the father of the Jewish nation. It is prohibited to refer to Avraham by the name Avram. And the same thing applies to Sarah. Sarai was her non-Jewish name. Once she became Sarah, the mother of the Jewish nation, we can only call her Sarah. We can't call her that name anymore. However, when it comes to Yaakov, yes, his name was Yaakov, but Yaakov and Yisrael, they're both Jewish names. So Yisrael is merely an additional name. It's not a replacement. It's not a complete change of identity. The name Yaakov applies and the name Yisrael applies. That's not a problem. Now, the great Sochatchover Rebbe, in his book Shem Shmuel, he adds to this explanation. And he says, let's look at what the name Yaakov means, and let's look at what the name Yisrael means. The name Yaakov comes from the word heel. Yaakov was grabbing at the heel of Esau when he was born. The name Yisrael, it means victorious, right? Yaakov fought against an angel and he won. So that means he was victorious. Now, the name Yaakov, which means the heel, is a reference to the fact that Yaakov was a humble person. Yaakov was an introvert. He was a quiet guy. He loved studying Torah. He was a scholar. Right? Yaakov, a humble person. Now, the name Yisrael represents a person who has power, a person who has succeeded in life. Think about the circumstances of Yaakov's life at this particular point in time. He left his house, he went to a foreign country. In that foreign country, he got married. He has 11 children at this point. He's become incredibly wealthy. He battled against an angel and won. Yisrael has it all. He's wealthy. He has a family. He is victorious. He's powerful. Yet, what does the Torah continue to call Yaakov? We still use the name Yaakov. Why? Because he never lost the humility that he had. Yes, he grew. Yes, he prospered. He became victorious. Wealth, family. He became a Yisrael. He became a person who was a powerhouse. He did not let that consume him. He did not let that overcome him. He did not let that redefine him. Yaakov remained the same Yaakov, the same humble person that he always was. So therefore, sometimes the Torah calls him Yisrael, his new name. But at the end of the day, Yaakov is still Yaakov, and we continue to use that name. Yaakov was, in his own estimation, always a heel. This, my father explained, is the reason one may continue to call Yaakov by that name, even once he was Israel. Even once he attained the status reflected in the name Israel, because you have commanding power, he continued to be Yaakov, namely humble. we can see the humility that Yaakov maintained when he's about to have that confrontation with Esav. Remember, he ran away from the land of Israel because Esav was going to kill him. He's then returning back to the land of Israel, where Esav is ready to kill him. So Yaakov prays to God. What does Yaakov say? Yaakov says, I have become small from all the kindnesses you have rendered. Yaakov is humble. He doesn't pray to God saying, I am righteous, I am virtuous, I have obeyed, I have observed, right? I am the pious one. Esav is the murderous, wicked, evil person. Save me and punish him. That's not his approach. He prays to God and he essentially says, who am I that I should deserve to be saved? I'm undeserving. I'm not worthy. Even though God has blessed him tremendously, his attitude was, the closer that God is to me, the more humble I am. All of the blessings that God has bestowed upon me, I don't deserve it. I'm overwhelmed by it. Perhaps I have no more merits left. Perhaps everything good that was coming to me has already came to me, and maybe Esav is going to be victorious. So his entire attitude, his entire personality is, I have become small from all the kindnesses you have rendered. He was a person who felt that he was truly undeserving. He had no sense of entitlement. He did not feel I'm entitled to anything or that I deserve anything. If something bad happened to him, he took responsibility for it. That was his attitude. He would say, it's my fault, or I didn't deserve it, right? This is the personality of Yaakov. However, Esav was exactly the opposite. Esav was the ultimate narcissist. Esav was the person who absolutely felt he is always entitled, which led to a horrible character and personality of arrogance. He did not take responsibility. Anytime anything happened, blame other people. It's not my fault. Esav was the first person to point the finger. And this helps us understand, why didn't he divorce his Canaanite wives? What was the issue? Now, first, let's think about this a little bit. Yaakov takes the blessings. What should Esav's reaction have been? Esav's reaction should have been, wait a minute, I sold the right to the blessings to Yaakov. Why did Yaakov receive the blessings? Because he deserved it, because he had a right to it, because Yaakov was entitled to it. Why did I not get the blessings? Because I don't deserve the blessings. I am not entitled to the blessings. I sold the blessings. Yet what was his attitude? His attitude was, it's always someone else's fault. Why did he not get the blessings? It's my wife's fault. My wives are Canaanites. Their pedigree is not good enough. Therefore, I didn't get the blessing. So the lack of blessing is not his fault. No, right? He needs to add better lineage, right? It's his wife's fault. That's why he didn't get the blessing. In the words of the Shemer Shmuel, Esav was wicked from beginning to end. Just as he initially felt that he was always proper and correct and did not ascribe to himself any deficiency, so he remained even at the end. Although the wheel of fortune had turned against him, Esav was on top of the world, thinking that he and his children were to be blessed to inherit the universe. When things then changed, and he was suddenly Yaakov's inferior, because Yaakov had gotten the blessings, he should have considered that his own evil actions had brought this about. But he acted as he always had. He felt that he had done nothing wrong, and instead blamed his wives. I lost my place for a minute. All right. Saying that they are from Canaan, and it was because of their lack of pedigree that his offspring from them could not be blessed. So not only did he blame it on them, right, that their pedigree wasn't so good and he had to marry another wife, but he did not divorce them. Because if he divorced them, that's also ascribing blame to himself, that he didn't marry properly. So he kept them around. He couldn't divorce them. So he blamed them and as responsible for everything, because this was Esau's attitude: narcissist, ego, arrogant, entitled, did not take responsibility for anything. He was always about blaming people. Now, there's a very powerful message for us from this whole story. And that is, sometimes, right, we as people, we also exhibit Esau-like behavior. Oh, hold on a second, I gotta finish the text. All right. He therefore went to take a wife from the family of Yishmael, so that he could have children with illustrious lineage, and then his fortunes would return. Perhaps he thought that Yaakov may blunder in Lavan's home, and Isaac's words that if Yaakov would digress spiritually, Esau would surpass him would be fulfilled. Alternatively, he may have thought that he would kill Yaakov, and everything would automatically return to him as the only heir to the blessing. This is why he didn't divorce his Canaanite wives. In his eyes, all of his own and his wives' evil ways were fine. The only issue was that they lacked pedigree. You may have noticed, by the way, that the PowerPoint is a little bit of a different format than from the previous classes. And that is because I felt that this class, which is a class that I taught in 2014, and is a PowerPoint that I made back then, is more fitting for this week than the other material. So I'm playing around with the PowerPoint and the text a little bit. I had to insert them into the PowerPoint this way. So there's a very powerful message from us from this whole story. And that is, from time to time, right, we also have a little bit of that Esau in us, right? We have that ability within ourselves to say, it's not my fault, right? You may remember back when we were in school, and maybe we didn't get the best grade possible, and what did we say? It's my teacher's fault. It's not my fault. I studied, I read the book. It's the teacher, doesn't know how to give a test, doesn't know how to teach, etc. It's not my fault. Maybe there's an issue at work. And what do we say? It's not my fault, my boss's fault, my coworker's fault. We have circumstances in our life, in our relationships with our spouses, with our kids, with our parents, with our friends, people in shul. We all have issues where we say, it's not my fault, and we blame it on somebody else. Sometimes this is us, right? Sometimes this is us, right? But if we actually are honest with ourselves, if we tap into the element of Yaakov, which Yaakov is all about humility, we'll be introspective and we'll say, did I really do all that I could? Maybe I could have worked harder. Maybe I could have worked smarter, and maybe I would be more successful. Whatever the circumstances, it's so easy to blame it on other people. But we have to think, did I really do all that I can? Right? Is there some blame that needs to be laid at my feet as well? And this is the difference between children and adults. Children are narcissists. That's how they're born. That's how they're created. It's not their fault. They're completely and totally focused on themselves. They scream, they cry when they're hungry, when they're hurt, when they want something. That's okay, right? That's how it works. But children are meant to grow up, right? Children are meant to mature. An adult has to have the attitude, it's not all about me, right? Not everything is about me. There are some things that happen, and you know what? It's my fault. For a kid, it's never your fault, right? There's no kid who ever admits to anything. For a kid, it's always someone else's fault. But for an adult, we have to be able to say, it was my fault. We have to have the ability to take responsibility. This is remembering Yaakov. Yaakov was about humility, even though his name was changed. Because he was a Yisrael, he was victorious, he was wealthy, he was powerful. He never lost who he was as Yaakov. He always felt he was undeserving. Everything that happened to him was a kindness. He was grateful, right? He had so much gratitude. A lot of studies have actually demonstrated that why do people have, whether it's depression or sadness and things of that nature, it's because of unmet expectations, right? They have expectations. There's a sense of entitlement to certain things in life. What was Yaakov's attitude? I'm undeserving of anything. Therefore, everything and anything positive and good that happens, I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. I'm so appreciative of the kindness that happens in my life, right? It's a sense of entitlement that leads to anger and frustration and jealousy and so on. And the greatest thing is that at the end of the day, Yaakov, with his attitude of humility, he wrestled with the angel and won. So don't think that if you adopt the humble attitude of Yaakov, it's going to result in being stepped upon. It's going to result in being looked over. That there's no way to succeed. Exactly the opposite. You must have all the strength of Yisroel. But if Yaakov is in your heart, you can wrestle with the angels and you're going to win. You're going to be the most successful and you're going to be the most happy. Next week, same time, Tuesday night, 7:30 to 8, 30 minutes of Torah study. We're going to explore the Torah portion of Vayetze. And tomorrow begins our new 4-week JLR course, Outsmarting Anti-Semitism. There still is time to sign up. And for those who've already signed up, your books are waiting for you in the box on the porch of the shul. So right outside the shul is a plastic container. It has your name on it with the book. Right? Anyone have any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yes, Sabine.
So where does Yeshua's name change fit in?
So the commentaries discuss that actually the name, there's a Yud from Sarah's name, the Sarai, actually went to Yeshua's name. So the Yud from Hosea is Yeshua. But the difference there is that Yeshua was already Jewish. So Hosea was a Jewish name, and he upgraded his name, and he became a different person. So he became Yeshua. But
they never went back and called him Hosea. It wasn't interchangeable like with Yaakov. That's why I was wondering, because they're both Jewish names.
There is a point in time. So his name, he was never called Hosea again, but his name was actually called Yehoshua even before his name was formally changed, if I'm not mistaken. There are places in the Torah, so there is an interest. It's interesting that his name was called Yehoshua even before, I think, before the name was changed, or I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong. I don't remember, but it's a good question. Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a quick question.
All right, Joel.
Yeah, the angel. Why did the angel fight Yitzhak?
All right, so the whole episode of Yaakov, right, fighting the angel of Esau is fascinating. So there are different commentaries as to what actually happened. So one approach is that it's the angel of Esau who, because again, there was about to be this massive confrontation, Yaakov and Esau. So Esau's angel wanted to preempt the attack and fight Yaakov himself. Right, so that's one way of looking at it. The angel of Esau went to fight Yaakov earlier. However, there are other commentaries who say that it was not an angel of Yaakov. This was Yaakov fighting with himself. Yaakov was having an internal battle, an internal struggle as to who he was and what kind of person he was. Up until this point in his life, his identity was defined by his struggle and his battle with Esau. He defined himself by how he related and how he connected and how he interacted with his brother Esau. And the battle was a battle within himself to overcome that, to say, I will not define my identity by my relationship with Esau. I'm my own person. He had to get over that. And that was what the battle was about. And that was allowed him to confront his brother Esau successfully.
Another kind of off question, though. How often do angels get involved with humans throughout our Old Testament and books?
There's definitely a few stories. I wouldn't say there's dozens of stories, but you do have a few. When Yeshua is about to battle the city of Jericho, so the general in the army of God appears to him, holding a sword. So you definitely have some encounters with angels throughout the Torah. I wouldn't say there's dozens of them, but you certainly have them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you so much for joining. Have a fabulous night. I'll see some of you tomorrow. Some of you on Shabbos. We got a fabulous bar mitzvah in Shul this week, so it should be great. So have a fabulous evening and a great week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.